Scott, can we talk transfers? The window closed last week. From your viewpoint as Executive Director, how productive do you feel the summer transfer window was, in reflection, please?
We're delighted where we ended up. As it turns out, it's been one of the busiest windows certainly I've ever been involved in. We've brought 8 players into the club since the end of last season, and that's happened right through the period from June all the way virtually to the last day. But we're delighted with where we ended up.
Out of interest, how much planning goes into a transfer window, or is it sometimes a case of being reactive to players that suddenly become available?
Yeah, there are always those situations where players become available that you may not have expected, and typically those will happen right towards the tail end of the transfer window once other clubs have made their decisions. But from our point of view, the planning was months in the making. I think I'm on record talking about Isaiah Osborne, and the fact is we were looking at him back in October, and you sit with the manager and with the scouting staff, you identify the areas on the park where we want to strengthen, you agree the priorities, and then you try and find the players that fit those positions.
As part of your new role, you've obviously transferred from Easter Road to the training centre at East Mains. How's that gone so far, and what's the mood like in the training centre at this point in time, bearing in mind where we are in the SPL standings?
The mood is very determined. I think there's a genuine belief amongst the group, amongst the players, and amongst certainly the coaching staff and the manager, that we have a group with the attributes who will allow us to win games of football in this league and move up the table. And that's probably how I would characterise it. It's determined, it's positive, and in the same way as when we had a very bad run previously, there was no feeling of panic or despondency. There was a professionalism and a doggedness and a determined attitude, and there's definitely still that feel down there just now that we will get ourselves away from the bottom of the league, and that's how it feels.
Well, see, the season started in July. We've now had a blank weekend because of the international fixtures. Perhaps a chance to evaluate and appraise what's happened so far. From your vantage point as Executive Director, what would be your evaluation? Well,
we're disappointed. You can't see anything other than that when we're placed where we are in the league. And words aren't going to make any difference to how we feel or how supporters feel about that. It's now about performances, it's now about results, and forcing our way up that table back to where we think we should be.
So improving the squad, player recruitment is key. What's happening now on the transfer front? Is it a case of just shutting up shop until January, or does the work continue from now?
No, the work never stops. You'd probably expect me to say that, wouldn't you? But in fact, the last 5 days of this transfer window just closed. David Woodison, our scouting coordinator, has actually been abroad, watching a number of games in a particular area where we feel there is talent and there is good value to be had, and that's with a view to January and perhaps even next summer's transfer window. So that work never stops. And the week that's just gone by and the week that we're now in, there's so much international football being played, so many under-21 matches also around Europe in particular. It's a great opportunity for us to be out and about watching players, watching matches, and that's exactly what we've been doing.
How would you sum up your working relationship with the manager, Colin Calderwood? Is it a case of him identifying potential transfer targets and then you kind of getting the deal over the line, or how does it all work, Scott?
Well, in simple terms, yes. The judgment on whether a player is the right player or is a good enough player is absolutely his. My role is to try and bring some structure and some order to the support that goes around that, the scouting resources that work with the manager, and understanding clearly, interrogating what his priorities are, to know that if I go and push to secure a player or to do a deal, that it's absolutely in line with the plan that the manager has for the group. It needs to be a close working relationship, and it has to be very open and straightforward, so there's absolute clarity and no room for doubt on what it is we're trying to do.
See, the league table doesn't lie. Sadly, we are rock bottom at this point in time. How can we address the issues that perhaps have surfaced, particularly in the last few weeks? How can we put those right, and how can Hibs start climbing up the table?
Well, it's not for me to determine how the team are going to play. All I know is that the coaching staff and the management and the players are absolutely firm in the belief that they can address this, we can arrest where we are, and that they're working very hard on the training pitch. it's not for me to explain how they're going to deliver that on the park. That's not my role. That's down to the manager. But equally, we have had a number of injuries that have curtailed our start to the season. As you know, as everyone knows, we only had Gary O'Connor as a fit striker for a while, and a number of the players who we've signed, and we're delighted to have them, and in some cases we've had to be very patient to sign them. But they've joined us later in the transfer window, and that can sometimes be a problem for you. It takes a little bit of time for all of those players to gel and to bed in. But we don't have a lot of time now. You know, it has to start now, and we have to start winning games.
How difficult is it for yourself in the role of executive director? You're a visible presence here at the club. Match days, for example, the Ian Murray testimonial game, a lot of punters, a lot of disgruntled fans approaching yourself, trying to air their views and vent their spleens to a certain extent. How difficult is that to manage sometimes?
Well, it's never pleasant when people have such forthright views that they want to express, and sometimes they express them very directly. But you have to accept that that's the passion that comes with being a football supporter and a Hibernian supporter. And as I said earlier, my words, no one's words are going to make any difference to how any of us feel or how any supporters feel. It's all about now actions and winning matches, and you have to respect the supporters' right to tell you what they feel about their club. That's never going to change, and at this club certainly what will never change is we'll never hide away from that, and we'll never hide away from providing supporters with the opportunity to ask us the questions that they might want to ask, and to give us their opinions, and we welcome that.
What's your vision then for Hibs in terms of the football department? What would you like to take the football department towards?
Well, ultimately our vision is to, as we've said many times, is to win enough games so that we're challenging for European places in the SPL and competing in the latter stages of the cup competition. So that's a line that many people have heard many times. How are we going to get there? Well, we need to solidify the benefits that we have as a club. The new organisation structure with Fife and myself in different roles is part of that plan to allow me to focus purely on the sporting success. Youth development will retain itself as a core part of what we're trying to achieve in the future. But I think the biggest area where I can now focus my attention, and that has started since the transfer window stopped, is looking beyond Scotland, looking beyond the club, and trying to establish better relationships with other organisations in other parts of the world, other clubs, so that we have a better spread in terms of contacts around Europe, potentially around the world, and those sort of relationships will be a core part of what I'll spend the next 6 or 7 months working on.